You're listening to the Best Morning Routine Ever podcast, the show that proves no one stumbles upon success ever. With your host, Lou Need. Every Mondays and Thursdays, we deliver cold hard evidence behind the power of a robust morning routine. Get ready to be transformed by the renewal of your mind.
Hello, morning enthusiasts. Welcome to the Best Morning Routine Ever podcast. My name is Lou Need and I am your host. And today I have the honor of introducing a very special guest to the show, Dr. Tracey Thomas. Dr. Tracey is the founder, creator, and clinical director of Dr. Tracey, Inc. As the world's first emotional scientist, Dr. T has built the most extensive emotional training portfolio in the world, and her comprehensive programs are designed for helping highly driven, emotionally sensitive people elevate their lives from the struggles with creativity. Dr. T is also a licensed psychologist, an interventionist, a recovery strategist, and a performance coach. She's helped hundreds of struggling clients fully recover from complex emotional and behavioral conditions and completely remove them from their lives. Fantastic. She's been published and cited in hundreds of national magazines for her unique approach to mastering life's twists and turns, and her book, The Method, The Practical Path to Living Your Purpose and Potential, became a national bestseller. Dr. T, welcome to the show.
It is great to be here. I'm really excited to share this time with you and really elevate your audience.
I'm so excited and thrilled to have you here. I mean, your background, you are all clinical in psychology. Tell us a little bit about what got you started.
Sure. I come from a family of highly reactive people who were really brilliant. And throughout my childhood, I could see the difference between my family members and my parents especially, and the difference between who they really were and all of the emotional reactions that were sabotaging them and keeping them from truly enjoying their success and creating more of it. And as I watched this throughout my childhood, I really, from an early age, decided, that I was going to be so much more emotionally empowered than my family in order to also help them. But at the same time, when you're in a lot of emotional sensitivity and reactivity in your upbringing, you end up syncing up with that. And even though I knew I wanted to be different, I was experiencing life like my family members had, where I was becoming very successful, but I was highly reactive and not able to enjoy it. And so I really made a whole next level commitment to become the world's greatest expert on our emotions and what causes all these difficulties that keep people from just being able to do what they know they're really here to do in this world. And I knew that if I became a psychologist, then people would also trust that I had done my due diligence and that I could really train them into the emotional, into a level of emotional mastery that people really need to be successful in this life, which is very, very demanding. And we really have to elevate our emotional capacity. And so I couldn't see anything more important than this priority in life.
Yeah, the clinical psych, the PhD gave you the credibility, the PsyD, the credibility you need so people can hear you out. Like what you have to say is crucial. People don't take it seriously enough.
That's right. And when you devote yourself, I really thought about that, and I thought, if I want to spend my life helping people by really having like what I consider like an emotional X-ray vision on what's happening to them and what's keeping them from really being who they are and contributing what they're here to contribute, I knew that it was important for me to go on that journey and move myself through something that required emotional commitment and intentionality. So even though it was great training in psychology for a PhD, it was also about living what it is that it takes for somebody to be able to have a vision for themselves and actually fulfill it. So it's served many, many purposes. And it's been a really important part of having people make huge transformations in their life.
Yeah, because when you said you, as a child, as you were growing up, you tried to differentiate from that. You're trying to find a different way of going about it. The truth remains, we are a product of our environment.
We are. We sync up with with the emotional environment that we from and the emotional environment around us.
We are socially constructed, and there's no way around that unless you do the deep work that you've done for yourself and what you're trying to do for everyone else.
Well, Lunid, it's exactly, unless you take over the construction of your own emotional infrastructure so that your emotional infrastructure can then become a foundation for everything that you do from there.
Right. It's a domino effect. So I want to get into what that process looks like, because I know you have a method that you invented and created. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So in watching and observing my family members was the first, laboratory. And again, from a very young age, I knew this was different even as it was happening for me. I could, at 4 years old, just instead of just seeing my family in the topics that they were struggling in, I would watch and really be able to see the dynamics that were happening. And what I noticed, and then I watched it in all the people around me, my girlfriends, my own self. I studied myself and my own emotional dynamics. And as I've observed in, all the organizations that I worked in and all the type of, we have all these different sub-communities in our life, I could really see that even though people think that they're struggling with the topics and the issues and these things that people go back and forth about with their own self and with other people and the arguing and the debating and the lack of understanding, I was able to see, Lunid, that it's the dynamics that are happening. It's the reactive dynamics. And when I started to just track the reactions and see the pattern of reactions in myself, in other people, in my relationships, then it allowed me to not get hung up on just the issue or the topic, because whatever anybody's struggling with, it's typically because they're in a pattern of their own reactivity that they've synced up with. As we talked about, you were constructed in your upbringing by all the reactions that happen around you. Mm-hmm. So I knew that if reactions were causing the struggle, then intentions were the opposite of that. And I studied this like a physics equation, because physics is what we are. And it became very clear to me that we could either be in a chain of reactions, again, they call it a chain reaction, where everything was sort of taking control of us, or we could shift from reactivity to intentionality every time we had a reaction. And so I did this with myself. I did this on myself for years to make sure that everything that I was testing out in my own laboratory would work. And every time that I shifted from a state of reactivity into an intention and connecting to my vision for the future, then my emotional state elevated. And when I just did that over and over and over, hundreds and hundreds of times, then I realized that my new reactions were actually intentions. And so this was an incredible outcome to discover that all of those reactions that had ever happened around us that created reactions in us, that if we, as you put it, I really appreciate your understanding, if we could construct our life through shifting reactions to intentions, then we could basically become constructed into a series of constant intentions. And it was so beautiful to realize that every time I was in intention and connected to a future vision or outcome, I felt fabulous. And every time I was in a reaction, I felt yucky and sick and awful. And I developed all kinds of symptoms. And when I was in intention, all those symptoms went away. And all it took was for me to stay consistently connected with myself, noticing whether I was in a reaction or an intention, and simply being willing to shift from one to the other. And this was so important, Looney, because people need things to be simple and practical in order to live their potential. And you could take all of the teaching we've ever learned, and our life will come down to this very framework, which is you're either in a reaction or an intention. And one way will get you to what you want, and another way will take you in the wrong direction.
It will destroy you.
It will destroy you, your health, your family, your finances. It will make you literally sick, and it will kill you.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you understand this, because it really is that simple.
Yeah, because I can see how being so reactive all the time, where you have no control over yourself. You have no control over your mind. You have no control over your thought. It's almost like you're extrinsically motivated. And
happening, you're basically, instead of your internal environment being warm, friendly, vibrant, and where you're at home in your own, again, your internal environment is really your home. And what happens is all the external environment gets internalized, and all of a sudden you're conditioned to be reactive, and your chemistry goes haywire. You're basically in the passenger seat when there is no way you can go the direction you want to go when you are in the passenger seat of your own self.
That sounds exhausting, Dr. T.
My God, I know. That's why I was exhausted by 28 years old. And I had an eating disorder from the time I was 12. And people get confused about all these disorders. And even my well-intentioned colleagues in the field of therapy and recovery, this is still being overcomplicated by people, that like an eating disorder is different from an addiction or anxiety or OCD or ADD. If you boil it all down and study it as detailed as I did, every single bit of it is reactivity. And reactivity happens because you're either born more sensitively, and then you're going to react more than other people. But then no matter what, if you just keep reacting, you will become more sensitive to reactivity. And either way, it's the opposite of health and vibrancy and well-being. So the ADD is reactivity. You're distracted in a reaction. The anxiety is just chronic reactivity. The coping mechanisms of having to eat something or drink something or smoke something is all because the chain of reactions is so painful that whatever we can do to stop it, those are the coping mechanisms to just try to shift the reactivity. But we're already born with an innate ability to be intentional, focus, follow through, and we have our own ability to be elevated and be feeling fabulous. And the opposite and so the happiness that everyone's seeking is just being in an intentional state instead of a reactive one. And when I simplified all of that, I could treat every single disorder the same way and get the same outcomes for people. And that was a level of simplicity that I believe my field has been really in need of.
Yeah, because you take your clients out of a fight or flight stage, because they're at that fight all the time. That's just overproducing cortisol. It's just endorphins, just too much of it, and your body doesn't know how to react to it.
And well, then you become conditioned for that chemistry. Then your body thinks that's your normal chemistry. And at a certain point, what I found, Lunid, is, all these years of, at this point, thousands of consultations, And I could just see all the themes. And what would happen is the more emotionally sensitive someone was from the beginning of their life, by the time they hit like 30, maybe they made it to 40, they were already out of fuel and they still have 50, 60 years to live. And it's like, how am I going to do this when I can't even right now be emotionally stable enough to, again, manage myself, manage my finances and my children. And so the reality is for all of us to live in the most wonderful internal environment and then create the external environment we really want, we must organize the reactive chaos that's all around us, that's in us, into intentions, which is what organizes everything and makes awesome things happen.
I'm hearing a lot of self-awareness too. So how does emotional intelligence come into this, if at all?
Yeah, because it's the basis for everything. Because this is my one of the most important contributions I'm here to make in this world with my lifetime, is that from the beginning of our life, and even if when we're pre-verbal and people don't maybe realize that we're totally understanding everything, even if we can't speak it yet, having self-connection be just a way of being. This is crucial, because if we are not connected to self and self-monitoring from the earliest years of our life, then this is why children are reacting and they're tantruming and they're overwhelmed and they're melting down. And then that just continues. We end up being chronologically one age, but emotionally another age.
Mm-hmm.
And this gap between your actual chronological age and where you should be and what you should be capable of, and where you're actually emotionally a younger age, is really messing with people, because humans have a lot of responsibility, and we're in a world that will not allow you anymore to be an emotional child.
Right.
We got to be emotionally adult and intelligent, and the connectivity to ourself is, again, it's essential, so you can just know, am I following my intentions for the day, or am I reacting and going all over the place? Because your outcomes depend on whether or not you are monitoring yourself and keeping yourself directed toward your priorities and your purposes. It's not even an option anymore.
Yeah, that transition emotionally from childhood to adulthood, it really goes overlooked, because even at 25, I was so burnt out. And this was before I got my PhD. I was so burnt out. I was doing clinical work and working with a population, domestic violence and drug abuse. And I tell you, I was burnt out at 25. I felt like I was 40. And that's what you just discussed, is like we're emotionally not adapting as we get older, as we age.
Yeah, we're not adapting. And what's happening, Lunid, and you so get this, is that we've never been in a faster evolutionary period in human history. And this talk about the need for adapting. The age of technology has made it so humans, we're in the biggest level of potential that we've ever had. We have access to do literally anything.
Mm-hmm.
And with that comes great responsibility for managing your attention and focus, because we've never processed more stimulus. No humans in human history has ever processed this much stimulus. And when there's this much stimulus, we must adapt to managing our intentions, because in a world full of amazing influencers and teachers and coaches, even that can be chaotic if we are not directed toward focused outcomes. People will take in all kinds of stimulus and they'll keep reacting, even to the best stimulus there is. And when you're reacting to stimulus rather than totally connected to your intentions, you will literally you will chronologically age yourself forward without emotionally growing your intelligence. And that's the other flip side of what's happening. And you just described it perfectly.
That sucks. That's what midlife crisis is all about.
Well, and Lanit, now people aren't even making it out of the gates. I mean, sometimes my clients are 25 years old and they have never, ever adapted to being able to self-manage and build outcomes because their parents are also highly reactive and don't want them to struggle in any way. And the only way to grow and be competent is to learn to manage reactions, not have them managed for you, which really doesn't do anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. What is what is emotional and strength training that you do?
So this shift, Lunid, from just, being like, this is how I remember being. I was just in life. I was a younger person. I had, plenty of intentions that I was working on, but I had a massive amount of just experiencing chaos in my family, my own self, my relationships, at work. And all of that chaos, I'd come home and then I'd need to eat a bunch of candy and do all kinds of stuff. And I was just in a chronic state of reaction. And what was happening is I didn't have the emotional strength. I didn't even know that I was in a reaction, even though it's kind of obvious when I look back now. And when I discovered and really made a commitment to figure this out and study myself instead of judge myself, I found that in those moments of reactivity, I had to truly reconnect and harness all of that reaction that was running away with me, was running away with itself. And it was a strength that I had to cultivate to harness that reaction and keep shifting it. And every moment I was in a reaction, I just kept going, okay, what am I shooting for? I'm shooting for health, vibrancy, I'm building a business, I'm building a great relationship. And I would keep putting my intentions. And if I had to do that for 5 minutes, I did it for 5 minutes. If I had to do it for an hour, whatever I had to do so that my reactivity, all on my own account, not through some other external thing, but it kept getting harnessed and I kept strengthening my ability to shift those reactions into some sort of a connected vision to a future in a healthy body, in a healthy relationship, whatever it was, giving a talk. I kept harnessing and harnessing, and I realized this was emotional strength that was necessary to instead of getting my own butt kicked by my emotions, I had to crank the wheel and crank it in the other direction. And then the more I did that, Lunid, I realized, okay, now I've got emotional momentum. And when you put intentions over and over into your focus, you build an intentional emotional momentum that makes it's like working out, and you become strong in your intentionality. And then that makes it's like if you worked out, you don't have to work out. The amount that it takes you to get strong is not the amount that it takes you to stay strong. And once you get to this level of strength, then you're only upgrading it a little bit every day. But to get there, one must really develop their emotional strength the same way they develop physical strength, by building it.
Yeah, and if one becomes great at it, you'll achieve a lot, because being intentional is actually harnessing that emotion towards a goal, a future goal, something that you want to achieve and accomplish. And yeah, I can imagine the more you take action, the more confident you become, the less you take your emotions so seriously.
Exactly right, because at the heart of the matter, human beings need to be able to go from an intention to an outcome without a lot of confusion or chaos or second guessing themselves. And what happens is the way, as you said, we're socially constructed, and all of the time in our upbringing or in the incubators we're in every day, any amount of people questioning themselves and not trusting themselves, judging themselves, and going against their own intuition, we end up absorbing that and we sync up to that. And we've been all conditioned to follow a prescription that is someone else's prescription, and not to trust our own navigation system, that when we connect and say, what is exactly what Tracey is supposed to be doing, the answer is always there. And when we will follow that and harness that and do the actions toward that because it's our prescription, again, it just keeps building momentum and building momentum. And then you get out of all of the chaos and indecisiveness, and you don't need to discuss it 72 times with 18 people. You just know this is what it is, follow through, and you become, that's the way you then exist, which is my belief, Lunit, is we were created this way because why would we have it be so chaotic and confusing just to run our own system of our own self? It just doesn't make any sense to me.
And I want to piggyback on what you said about being socially constructed, because we picked up programming from others, from our parents, and that's programming doesn't serve us any longer. And it's by design. We're as babies, we're in an alpha state where all we're meant to do and designed to do is download data. We're learning a new organization. We're learning names, faces. We're learning a new language. That's all. We're not here to judge. We're not here to pick what we're going to learn and not learn as babies from, up to the age of 7 years old, right? So we've downloaded a lot of data, some bad, some good. And a lot of it's what serves, it's somebody else's programming, somebody else's data that when we grow up, we don't have our own identity.
And then people are going like, I follow this prescription, and why am I not feeling like, this is creating the outcomes I want? And having done that, okay, like get married, get the house, get the great job, do the thing. And I'm like, okay, that prescription does make a lot of sense, but it's an external prescription. And if I don't have my emotional infrastructure to support it, then all of these external things, they're not really connected to meaning or intentions. And you're exactly right that we're getting all of the download, and that's why the parenting process needs to be simplified. And it actually is simpler than people realize, because you don't even have to teach all that much to a child if you will live the simple framework of intentionality versus reactivity. Because then, think about it, we're just going to download that as our primary framework so we can put that through the filter of our own unique prescription for ourselves.
That makes sense. Can you share an emotional strength technique that our audience can implement into their life today?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, everyone, make an absolute lifetime commitment to yourself that you will be connected to you as your primary relationship, because no matter how much we're like able to look and see and feel what everyone else is doing, we must be primarily connected to our own selves as our primary experience, so that you can constantly be scanning your environment of you, knowing when you have shifts, changes, knowing when you've dropped out of intentionality and into some state of reactivity, knowing what your vision is for your life and what you're creating, because all of that must stay, you must stay connected to it Otherwise, what happens is you will just pick up on everybody else's agenda and vision around you, and that's for them. And so the connection to yourself, and this is something I want to give my mom all the credit in the world for, because she is a massive influence here and she's responsible for this. She taught me at 10 years old. She said, Tracey, our family, she said, on both sides, your family has lots of history of chaos and craziness. And she said, always, always, always monitor yourself and keep yourself on track. And I did, Lunid, take that to heart and then turn it into the most simple thing that I could possibly do. And so for each and every person, don't be confused by, don't be confused by something like presence, because maybe that doesn't explain it as clearly as you are connected to your own self to monitor yourself actively. And when you are in a state of reacting, make a commitment that anytime you get out of connection and you are in reaction, that you will be so good to yourself by simply saying to yourself the following thing: what is my intention? And when you will ask yourself that question, like I do all day, every day, the answer will come to you. And when you get the answer, trust it, follow it, get back on track, and do not spend one more moment in reactivity. And why this is so important is because whether you're judging, whether you're afraid, if you stay in a chain of reactivity, you are losing life that you will never regain again. And you will be the architect of costing yourself something you can never, ever get back.
Well put. Well put, Dr. T.
This one process will radically change your life. Your every legacy that you are carrying forward, and you can change your entire ancestry of reactivity and build a new legacy for yourself and everyone that comes after you. Mm-hmm. And that is how everyone is here to change the world, by shifting from reactivity to connected intentionality.
Tell us about your morning routine. How do you get up, dress up, and show up?
Got it, girl. Okay. So the first moment I awaken, because I tracked all of these years of my life, that from the moment people wake up, they already start reacting. And we want to harness those reactions right away and start connecting to intention. So the moment I awaken, I trained myself this over years and years and years. And so it's pretty automated right now. But when it wasn't, I would just harness my mind and I would start to think of what I was going to create as outcomes. And what we don't want to do is start thinking about our to-do list, which is not an enjoyable set of intentions. What we're doing is, like in this case, this interview for me, the way I thought about it was, I am going to change the life of thousands of people today, just with this 1 hour here, 1.5 hour that we're spending together. So when I wake up in the morning, I start thinking about the outcomes, not the to-do list, because the to-do list is only the steps of what we're creating. So if we're going to, fill up our refrigerator with groceries, I'm thinking about how I'm going to nourish my body and how healthy my body's going to feel and what I'm going to do. And every single thing that you can all do to be already living that vision, those outcomes, seeing yourself at the end of the day, high-fiving your husband or your spouse or your kids, living in that space. And for me, I spent about 10 minutes there. And by the time I wake up, I'm energized, and it's like all I can do to just hurry up and get ready so that I can start fulfilling these outcomes and enjoying them. And this right here changed what it's like to wake up every day, which is one of people's most painful things that ever happens to them. So this is a game changer right here.
I like it. So setting intentions earlier in the morning before you get out of bed. How can we connect with you?
Yeah. Okay. So everyone, you're going to go, if you want to learn more and also be able to take our emotional sensitivity test. We'll tell you about where your sensitivity is and how your sensitivity and reactivity works. Go to the drtracyinc.com website, which is drtracyinc.com, drtracyinc.com. Start with the emotional sensitivity test, and you'll learn all kinds of things about yourself, which will upgrade your emotional strength from there.
Perfect. Morning enthusiasts, you've heard it here first. This has been Dr. T, and she talks about stepping out of reactivity and getting into intentionality. And it speaks true. Dr. T, I thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Lanid. Good luck, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, morning enthusiasts, that's it for today's show. Thank you for tuning in. If you love the Best Morning Routine Ever podcast, we'd love to hear from you. So go ahead and subscribe, rate, and give a review on iTunes or Google Play. While you're at it, tell a friend about the show. Be sure to visit bestmorningroutineever.com and our Facebook group to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our fantastic free bonus content. Until next time,